Hello, and welcome to the Pretty Nerdy Podcast, where we talk about all things geek and nerdy. I am the co-host today on the lovely Pretty Guardians channel. Pretty Guardian, how you doing today?
I am doing so well and so glad to have you on my channel, as always. I'm very excited to have our pre-game discussion for Baldur's Gate 3.
Me too. Oh, I'm so excited. I'm going to get a little verklempt here every once in a while because it's just looking forward to it. Maybe a bit too excited, a little feral, but I'll try and keep it manageable for the listening audience. With Baldur's Gate 3, this is obviously going to be the third installment of this franchise. I know you've been a big fan of Lyrian. Can you tell me about your history with them?
Absolutely. So, I'm a big fan of the CRPG genre as a whole. Even back in the day, a lot of the indie darlings like Jeff Vogel from Spiderweb Software, he did the whole Exile trilogy. And then to modern games, we have Pillars of Eternity, and then there is Larian Studios. And they've done the Divinity Original Sin, and then Divinity Original Sin 2 was their more recent one, where they just kind of brought a level of polish to the game that I've never seen in the CRPG space yet. Just beautiful graphics, amazing storytelling. And they've done a lot as far as connecting their different plot hooks in a way that's scripted so that the game can be resolved in dozens of different ways. So I'm really excited to see that evolution of gameplay and storytelling and the D&D franchise brought to a AAA game.
You know, that's definitely what kind of drew my attention in the first place. I make it no secret that I am huge into D&D. I've always loved it from the moment we sat down and played it during 4th edition. The idea of an immense world with literally countless opportunities to tell a story, tell your story, is just so intriguing to me. And this studio that admittedly I've only started to hear about since Baldur's Gate 3 was announced. I had played Divinity Original Sin 2 once at a party in co-op. The ideas there were this top-down experience that was very D&D-esque, but it didn't have the D&D title attached to it. I felt like that was a missed opportunity that now is being taken care of in a way I am so happy to say is scaring other game developers.
Okay, we need to talk about that for a minute.
Please, let's.
Okay. So when I first heard about these game developers who were scared, I was thinking about it from the indie perspective. As an example, recently there was a game called Edge of Eternity, and it's this $30 RPG made by a team of less than 8 people. And what they did was create this very expansive, over 60 hours of gameplay, very high quality graphics, voice acting, just this really incredible RPG. But they got a ton of crap from people who picked it up and were disappointed that it wasn't quite as polished as they were expecting, or some of the animations were a little bit janky. And basically what was happening is they were comparing it to AAA games. This was a game that for $30 made by a team of less than 8 people was competing with Star Ocean and the Tales of series. Not quite coming up to par, but I'm kind of worried that Baldur's Gate 3 will set that expectation for all RPGs in this space moving forward. Now, where they lost me, and they lost me fucking big time, was when the Diablo 4 and Blizzard devs were kind of chiming in there saying, oh yeah, Larian has all this institutional experience. This is a once in a lifetime type of game. You can't really expect other developers to do this. Anybody from Blizzard needs to shut the fuck up about that. Like, Blizzard has literally decades of experience in this space. They have more money than like just about any other studio on the market. If they're saying they can't do it, that's on them.
Absolutely. I think that's what's most telling about this situation. Admittedly, I wasn't thinking about the experience of the indie game developers that might feel the consequences of what Baldur's Gate 3 has on the table. I was more excited about the fact that the studio that's been around since the early 90s, Blizzard, saying, hey, don't expect us to make a game this good, which is kind of telling of where they are as a studio. They've been kind of running downhill, as far as I can tell, for the better part of the last 2-3 years.
I would probably say even longer than that, but I do agree with you. Yes.
And I think it's very interesting that this is how the other game studios are giving this game praise, is more or less saying, we're concerned. That to me as a player was just like, yes, I'm absolutely going to hold you to this standard now. Skyrim was the quintessential RPG at the time. Until, of course, they ran it into the ground where you can literally play it on your refrigerator. We kind of got sick of it because of how exciting and expansive Skyrim felt at the time. That's what made it so maybe intimidating for other developers, but we got some great games that cloned the Skyrim feel. All of this to say, like, we don't see a game that we really enjoy and don't expect other companies to come up to the bat. Like, you need to be as good, if not better, than this game going forward. And if you're already chickening out before you even come to the plate, maybe it's time to retire.
I think in that conversation too, I also kind of want to touch on the price points of a lot of these games. There's this move in AAA games where a lot of them are $70 now instead of $60. Like Diablo 4 was $70, and a lot of RPGs that I'm looking at for next year, like Starfield, are going to be $70. And so looking at Larian Studios coming out with this one still at the $60 price point, for me as a consumer, I would expect more from the Diablo 4s of the world, right? Because they are charging that higher price tag. So if AAA developers want to keep asking for more and more money, they're going to have to be prepared to deliver on bigger expectations as well.
Damn Skippy. As a consumer, I never liked the $70 price point to begin with. I don't get much of a say in it, but I do get to, but I eventually have to pay for it or wait for it to come down in price. I'll admit that that's a big reason why I didn't get Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom at launch. It was that $70 price tag. I think it's because you can spend that money and you know that it could still very well be buggy. Bethesda is a proponent of, we release our games buggy, and that's kind of their charm, and they think that they can get away with that, which, you know, they have, but it's the mod community that makes it better. Somebody comes in and makes it better for free, essentially. They might get a job later on down the line, but they initially buy the game first and then kind of prove themselves on the battlefield.
Well, even a game like Cyberpunk 2077, that one was really heralded. Everyone was very excited for it to come out. And then it launched and it was a buggy mess. It was a disaster. And this was from a studio where people would have sworn up and down that they really cared about putting out good games and good quality games. And we were still kind of let down, although the game has definitely had a turnaround since then.
Baldur's Gate has been in development for the last 2 years. I was lucky enough to get it week 1 of its announcement, and I've watched it kind of grow from this like toddling little idiot to like being very close to being a finished product in the early access. When it does drop, I know it's going to be just fine, at least on PC. I cannot say the same thing for PS5 because that's going to be a couple of days down the road, I think, in terms of release. And I've never seen it on the PS5, but I have to imagine there's got to be a translation in there somewhere where, because it's good on PC, it will be good on PS5. I don't want this to be another Cyberpunk, but I have every expectation to believe that it will not be. CRPGs are Lyrian's bread and butter. They're a little bit more well educated in the style, and I think that that is really going to show. That was another thing. As much as I liked Cyberpunk, I knew that they were coming off of The Witcher 3 at the time. Like, going from a third-person action-adventure fantasy to a first-person shooter was going to be a huge leap, like an open-world shooter. I did have that expectation in the back of my head, is like, are they going to be able to translate very well? And obviously, we got what we got with Cyberpunk. I do not think that this will be the same thing for Baldur's Gate. You had mentioned, we were talking about doing this episode about things we might be able to expect in terms of like DLC. And I think it might be fun to like look at Lyriad's back catalog of interesting ideas. And you would talk to me about the Dungeon Master Maker, or what was that in Divinity?
Well, yeah. So in Divinity Original Sin 2, and they might have had something like this in the first one, but I can't recall off the top of my head. They have a game master mode where somebody can take on the role of game master, and they can pop in monsters, create maps, and just kind of interact with the game engine in a very different perspective. And so I would actually be really surprised if that wasn't something that they did eventually do with Baldur's Gate 3. I understand why it wouldn't be a feature on launch, because having all those tools in like a user friendly like way would almost be like creating an entire game on top of that. But maybe something a year or two down the road, it's something that they could release for the game that would kind of extend its life possibly indefinitely for a lot of players.
You mentioned that, and you can vouch for me. I got giddy as a dungeon master. That concept really interests me, especially in the space of Baldur's Gate.
Yeah, and we've seen kind of an emergence of virtual tabletop tools and everything happening. So I feel like it would be a really good idea for them to do. And like I said, I'd be surprised if they didn't, just because we already know they have the capability.
So I will say that in the early access versions of the game, there's been some really interesting connective ideas that they've had. They know that people are going to want to stream this and check it out themselves and share it with an audience. So there's actually been implementation of Twitch integration, which I'm really excited to see. So like, for example, you can make your character and then send them off into the world, and then the decisions you make can actually be voted on by your chat.
Oh, what?
Yeah,
Okay,
I saw
so
that.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. You telling me that just got me really excited. So I was thinking, like, when I hit 1,000 subscribers, I would really love to do like a streaming series of like playing the game with my audience and stuff. And so for you to tell me that that kind of integrated feature could exist for this game, that's fucking awesome.
I think they can even do things to your rolls. Because when you make a decision in Baldur's Gate, you roll on a d20, and obviously the game will determine your success or failure based on that. But your chat can also mess with your roll, either giving you advantage or disadvantage. I think that was only in talks. I don't know if they were able to make that work. The roll system is fun. For those of you who have never played Dungeons and Dragons, you have what are called critical successes and critical failures. And when you do a critical success, you go above and beyond what it was you meant to do. And when you roll a critical failure, just the opposite, you fail in the most spectacular fashion. Depends on how flowery your DM wants to get. I saw someone roll a natural 20 on a squirrel biting them, and their response was, "I'm going to kick the squirrel." And they thought like a little love tap to the squirrel, like that's what they thought. But they rolled a natural 20.
Ooh,
the squirrel exploded.
Poor squirrel.
He was a dick. But that's just what that's what I'm really excited about with this game, is like, no matter how long you've played this game, you can play it the same. You can play it with the same character and make the same decisions as your first playthrough and into your second. And depending on those roles, it will be almost an entirely different game.
Just the scope of this game is going to be incredible. For example, over 174 hours of cinematic content. That's insane.
The amount of content it's going to feel like a D&D game. And I think even in early access, they've accomplished this. There's the amount of endings is also absurd. I think it's 1,700 endings. I cannot for the life of me remember the last time I was this excited about a game. Cyberpunk was up there as one of my most anticipated games. Pretty Guardian, like you had mentioned the people that were excited about Cyberpunk. I was one of those people. Just being able to throw yourself into this world and explore, and even as a dungeon master, I'm excited to see things that I hadn't even thought of, races that maybe I don't see very often implemented in a way, and maybe even help me become a better dungeon master just by scenario just by scenario alone.
Well, and it is exciting, especially with the D&D franchise. I would say in recent years, we've definitely seen a lot of increased representation in visual mediums, whether that's like the D&D movie or even all these like web series, like Critical Role and stuff, where you can actually like see them play at the table. But to see all these really iconic places brought to life in a game, like to actually be able to explore the city of Baldur's Gate, that's going to be pretty amazing.
Is there any locations that you would be excited to see as a player of D&D?
For me, I don't expect that like a lot of the places that I'd be most excited to see to be in this game, like Sharandar or the Feywild, or because I really like that like beautiful high fantasy type experience. I do think this game will be beautiful, but very much in a different way. And I'm just kind of excited to see where they bring us.
To kind of put a few chips in a Pretty Guardian Hope pile, the game has no problems going between planes. In the first couple of minutes of the game, you start in Avernus. You start in Hell. And you kind of plane skip back to the material plane and are able to then, like, that's when the game really starts at level 1. Like, that's where you start proper. So I have no reason to believe we won't see something like the Feywild. I don't know that we'll go into the more obscure places, like the Plane of Chaos. I think they even kind of hint at the Feywild. I can't be certain, but during one of the initial trailers, there's a scene with two lovers on a boat, and they're basically on this like crystalline water that has unnatural colors in it, and it like reflects in the night sky. Not necessarily 1-to-1, but that kind of strikes me as being Feywildy. My longest running game is the Waterdeep games. So I played Waterdeep Dragon Heist and Dungeon of the Mad Mage. So I would love to see Waterdeep brought to life. I don't know if we'll get there. Yeah, that's something I want to see. Maybe we can get the Spine of the World, where the giants hang out. Maybe get in a fight with a giant. Oh my god, getting in a fight with a giant. Now, of course, we have to talk about classes. What class do you want to play, and what class do you think you'll end up playing?
Well, so one class I hope they add eventually is Artificer. I think that one would be a lot of fun to play as. As far as like what I've seen so far, I have a few characters that I kind of want to run through. I think when in our game that we play, I plan on playing a bard. And then when I play by myself, I'm probably going to do a wizard. I usually like support classes, but it's not really fun to support when it's just you playing. So I figured with a wizard, I could do like tons of spells and just kind of really experiment with the magic system in the game.
That's a great idea. What did I just hear? 300 spells. Somewhere in the ballpark of 300 unique spells. It's amazing. It's amazing. I think Divinity had, I think the last I heard was like 200. For this game to be like, yeah, no, up the ante. It's just, yes. They even added spells that aren't in Dungeons and Dragons traditionally. For example, one of the classes that I want to play is a monk of the Shadow Order, and they had to make up a new spell for that class, and I want to check it out. They had announced it on their the panel from hell is what Lyrian likes to call it. But for our game, which by the way, announcement time, Pretty Guardian and I will be playing Baldur's Gate. We'll be doing like I think we agreed around the 50-hour mark. We'll do like a release of what we're playing. So if you guys are excited about that, now is the time. Let us know in the comments. Subscribe to Pretty Guardian, do all that good stuff. This is the shameless ad break to let you guys or remind you guys that yes, we are on YouTube. We like to defeat the algorithm gods. Help us out. Going back to the game, I think for our game, I want to play the Wild Magic Barbarian. If you're unaware, the Wild Magic table is meant to be pure chaos. Every so often, your character meets a condition that allows for you to roll on what's called the Wild Magic table, where 1 in 100 things will happen. Sometimes it's something as benign as you summon 5 flumps, and they just kind of dissipate into the air. Or you cast Fireball on yourself and kill everybody, or not kill everybody. You take a certain amount of damage, and so does everybody around you, including your friends. So like you kind of play this risk reward because sometimes it does buff your character, sometimes it debuffs your character, and that just sounds like mayhem I want in my life.
It'll definitely keep things spicy, that's for sure.
Absolutely. Maybe, oh my god, you've done it. You've already made it for me. I'm going to make a tiefling barbarian of wild magic, and I'm going to name him Spicy.
Oh, that's going to be cute.
I'm looking forward to it. Keeping things spicy. Keeping things spicy. I wish I could articulate why it is I feel the way it is I feel about this. When I see new games these days, I will always get a twinge in the back of my skull that says, yeah, but this feels wrong in this trailer. And I've never felt that for Baldur's Gate. Everything has just hit the right marks. And maybe it's just because they know what they're doing and they're making a solid title, or maybe my brain just has gone ahead and ignored that twinge, but I'm so stoked. And I'm looking forward to the amount of playtime that I'll be getting with not only you, but my D&D party and games that I'll play by myself. As of right now, how many games do you have lined up?
Probably about 3. There's going to be the game that I play with you, and then I'm probably also going to play it with Mitchell on the side. And then I'm for sure going to be playing solo as well. So it'll be very interesting to see how those 3 different experiences differ as I go throughout the game.
So like people that are playing Diablo, that they're playing Diablo and they're loving it up until this last update, of course.
Of course.
But they're looking at me and they're like, hey, that's the guy that's always wearing the Dungeons and Dragons t-shirts. We should talk to him about this Baldur's Gate game. So, maybe 5 games. Who knows? I might ruin some relationships with this game.
Oh my God.
I'm a little worried.
That's funny. I will say on my part, I have been burned by some games over the last 5 years or so, where I've spent a lot of money and just been really disappointed with the quality of game that I got in return. Mm-hmm. As much as I am excited, I will say there's a part of me that like almost mirrors your level of excitement for this game, but I'm trying so hard to just kind of like keep it back a little bit, like keep the expectations manageable. Like I really don't want to be disappointed by this one.
Yeah, I totally understand. And I was right there with you at where you are now, maybe 7 months ago, where like the game was like starting to ramp up and like they were saying, okay, get ready, we're going to start announcing things. But I was still in that mindset of there still could be something wrong. Like they're absolutely, and you have every reason in the world, have enough history with games to know that is absolutely the right way to approach it. But something about the official launch trailer, which is only a minute long, just washed away any idea for me. And I won't lie, I don't know why that is for me personally, but this is the way I feel. I feel like I no longer expect there to be a problem. I don't want to be that guy who's like, I was so excited about this game. How dare you ruin my life? If this game fails, I will be that because of just how much of my excitement I was willing to give to this game.
The thing that gives me the most hope for the game is honestly the fact that it's being done by Larian Studios, because we've seen them produce so many good CRPGs in the past through the Divinity series. They have a strong team in place. They put a lot of love and care into making Baldur's Gate 3. And they've been very communicative throughout the whole process, like releasing devlogs, the panels from hell, patch notes, and just kind of really connecting with their player base. So I feel like if there's any company out there that could do this, it's going to be them.
Blizzard, Activision, Bethesda, every one of you AAA studios. This is how you treat your fans. You keep them in the loop. You be completely honest. I think that a lot of these studios fail is because of how much they're willing to keep in their back pocket. Now, there is, of course, a level of surprise you still want to keep. And I honestly think that Lyrian hasn't shown their full suit yet. That said, like I said at the top, I've been playing the early access for the last 2 years, and I've seen the game grow from a buggy mess to not so much of a buggy mess until, of course, it is finally released. We've been in the loop the whole time. They've told us everything, all the new implementations, expecting things like, okay, this is going to fail, so be prepared for that to fail, and then we're just gonna spend the next couple of months fixing it. We see it. We see it from start to finish, and I think this is how you do it. This is how you build faith in your community. Because look at me. I am literally feral with how excited I am about this game because this company was so open. But at the same time, I don't know what to expect. There is still a level of uncertainty in the unknown. And my head is fully in the pond. I'm totally submerged. I'm into it. Whereas other game studios are like, oh yeah, Overwatch 2. And now we're going to go ahead and take away your shit. Win, lose, or draw, everything we've seen from Lyrian has been amazing. And if for some reason someone at Lyrian, I don't care if you're QA, I don't care if you're the head of Lyrian, you know what you're doing in terms of game development. You've shown us love and support. And I hope you get what you deserve when this game drops. I genuinely, you all deserve praise and love, and thank you. The game's not even out yet, and thank you.
And thank you. I really liked your verbiage there. Win, lose, or draw. I hope that Larian gets what they deserve out of this. And so far, I think that this is going to be the game that really skyrockets them into the public eye, kind of in the same way that Skyrim did for Bethesda. What you were telling me about your coworkers asking you about the game, to me, I don't think that would have happened with Divinity 5 or 6 years ago. So no. That kind of speaks volumes to the level of scrutiny this game's going to have on it.
If you've never played a CRPG, and maybe you don't know what we're talking about, this is going to be different than your Skyrims, and this is going to be more of a top-down point-and-click action strategy game, and that doesn't necessarily translate very well for a lot of new players. Those players, these new players, should know there might be a bit of a learning curve, but I promise if you stick with it, you're going to love your time. I'm just excited, man. As of recording, we're like a few days out from release, and I have plans to take off from work. I had to explain it to my mom the other day. I was like, yeah, no, I'm going to take days off of work to play this game, and she looked at me like I was a crackhead.
Oh, no. You know what? I felt this way, like, because people, when you're a serious gamer and you do stuff like that, people will look at you like you're a crackhead. And I feel like we need to put like some perspective on that, because there are people literally out there doing meth. All I want to do is play my fucking video games. Like, leave me alone. Right.
And I mean, like, you guys will go off and go watch cars go in a circle for 6-7 hours straight. Mm-hmm. That takes a day. You're probably taking a day or two off of work. And frankly,
I mean, tell me how much a Super Bowl ticket is, please, because I think like, don't those start at like 10 grand a pop? Yeah.
Think of all the PCs I can build with 10 grand.
That's what I'm saying.
Everybody's excited about their own things. Just be happy that they're happy if you like them in your life. This has been a lot of fun. I look forward to seeing the responses. And tell us in the comments about your character. I want to know what you built. I want to know your character's story so far. Blow us up. I want to see it.
I love that. Leave your character stories in the comments because we are here for them.
Ladies and gentlemen, and all people in between, thank you so much for watching. Can't wait to hear about your stories in Baldur's Gate and maybe even see you on the game. Thank you again to Pretty Guardian for letting me go nuts on this one. And be sure to take care of yourselves out there, everybody.
Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.